Today we have a very interesting topic on a subject which we as entrepreneurs or to be entrepreneurs has a sort of a love and hate relationship. That's failure. So the topic today is success in failure. Before I actually jump into the topic, I would like to ask you to raise a hand, all of you, including our panel, please. Please raise a hand, right? If you have not failed ever, you can keep your hand raised. If you have failed in your life miserably, badly, you can put your hand down. Okay, all right. It seems like we all have experienced failures. And may I ask, like, was it a pleasant experience? Did you enjoy that failure? Did you? No? Okay, yes and no. Okay, all right. The little chat I had with this fantastic panel, they seems to be like they're encouraging us to embrace failure. And I was thinking, wow, okay, I had so many failures and I don't like them, right? Do you want me to embrace failures? So this is a question we would like to actually drill down to understand more in more details. Please help me with a lot of questions. I'm going to open the panel pretty soon to the audience for your questions, so please be prepared with your questions. Okay, to start with, as I mentioned, this particular word failure has a bit of a love and hate relationship with startups. So I'd like to shoot a very open question to the panel. How this particular word failure, in your opinion, relates to entrepreneurship or startups? Maybe we can start with Heminder.
Yes, thanks, Asit. I think so one of the things I work with University of Moratuwa. I run the startup incubator at University of Moratuwa. So it's so far it's the only government university-based incubator, and I have seen at least 90 to 100 startups in the last 1.5 years. So out of that, I have seen 25 startups coming from concept level to prototype stage to launch level. So launch level means at least they have at least have one customer. But then the other 90 minus 25 all have failed. So at least 65 have failed. But the good thing that I see is that we run a program in such a way that we make them aware of whether the product's going to be successful or not at a very fast, rapid pace. So we do rapid prototyping, a lot of exercises in design thinking. And what we try to make sure is that if they want to fail or if it's going to fail, make sure that they fail as fast as possible. So then they realize, of course, they can come back again. And some of the startups, they change altogether and come up with another idea, and now they are pitching again. And some startups, they maybe they see that success in another startup, they join together. So they come up with a better idea with the same thing that what Glenn said in the earlier keynote speak, how collaboration, co-creation. So that's how it happens. So if you make that facility for that fast fail and then recreate, come back again, I think that's where we can see the success in times to come.
All right, okay, thanks, Heminder. So the particular failure you talked about is like basically the failure of the idea, so you're out of business, right?
Yes.
Sharan, in your experience, is there any sort of levels of failure we can look up to? Is there any type of failures we can embrace, any type of failure we can avoid? Is there any guideline for entrepreneurs in this business?
Sure. In terms of failure, there are micro and macro failures. So normally, when it comes to micro failures, day-to-day business failures, it's like finance and taking decision, or maybe collaborating with people and handling employees. These are the micro failures when it comes in terms of micro failure. For the macro failure, it's like maybe the business is going to get shut down. Maybe they are taking a wrong decision, or maybe kind of decision that going to kill entire product, or maybe the core product, something like that.
Okay. So even these micro failures, which are not like life critical, right? Like going out of business, can be expensive, right? Nilja, how do you actually make the best out of even these micro failures? How do you actually, how do you use, because they can be expensive if you make a lot of micro failures in a startup with limited amount of resources, you can end up with a macro failure. So how do you get the best out of these?
Sure, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. My name is Nurjor. I come from Bangladesh. I've been failing up, so to speak. I've failed in running a venture capital firm in Mongolia, failed in trying to start a shit business, a poop business. And then that became a bit successful, and then now I run a social business accelerator called Whitegap Bangladesh. So I deal with failures all the time through our entrepreneurs, and that can be costly. What you're talking about, costly failures, it's not just costly in terms of monetary value, but also psychological, right? You often, because when you're a startup founder, there's a very fine line between the company and yourself. And you often take it on yourself. You internalize that and see yourself as a failure. I think that's a very dangerous thing to have. The way I view failure personally over these different experiences, you know, what Thomas Edison said, right? It's not that I failed 1,000 ways to come up with a light bulb, it's that I found 1,000 ways that didn't work. Like what Glenn Robinson during the opening session talked about is that, you know, on average, it takes a salesman 7 tries, 7 no's before they get to a yes to convert a customer. So failure isn't necessarily an end in and of itself. It's simply a means that gets you closer to that ultimate success. I think that's what's always important to keep in mind.
Okay, all right. Sometimes when I speak to my friends about all of this startup game, they realize that failures can be costly, and sometimes they actually ask this question back. I already have a good life in my hand, right? I'm paid well, and I have all the basic needs and more. So, Yasmin, this is the question, like, why should somebody actually get into this entrepreneurship, right? If they actually already have a good life? Isn't that a better strategy to avoid failure rather than facing it?
Yeah, so just so you know, the statistics are pretty clear. 1 in 10 companies do fail. A lot of times, I actually think they give up, because in the end of the day, like, I think as an entrepreneur, it's about solving problems, and if you look around you, there are so many problems to solve. Like, if you haven't checked it out already, there's like a makerspace behind, and there are all these small little kids who are making these amazing solutions, and it's just like, I'm thinking to myself, if there are 12 fixing problems, I can't even imagine when they're 25. Like, the world's gonna be so much better. So for me, when I was 21, my father, unfortunately, he passed away. He had cancer for about 1.5 years. And it actually was amazing in a sense, because when my father was sick, I had watched The Bucket List. Anyone watch that movie before? The Bucket List? No? All right. So The Bucket List basically is a movie about these 2 guys who were dying, and they wrote a list of things to do before they died. So me being 21, I was like, Puppy, what do you want to do? And he looked at me and he said, I've done it all. And I remember thinking to myself, like, why is he making the answer so hard? Like, why doesn't he just tell me what he wants to do? And a couple of years later, I was sitting in the oil and gas sector. I had a really great job, got paid a lot of money, more than what I get paid as an entrepreneur, although my company is valued at more right now. And I looked at my boss and I looked at the CEO, and I didn't really want their jobs. And I asked myself that question: if today was my last day, could I say I've done it all? And I couldn't. So I quit, and it hasn't been super straightforward. It's been 8 years of just like Nagora, just trying stuff, and then actually, no, this is not what it is, and then repackaging it and redoing it again and again. And for me, I don't look at it as failure and success. I just look at it as I'm learning. It's life. I'm gonna screw up. Good on me. But as long as I get the fact that it's nothing to do about me and failure, it's just that it's separate, different things. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it's not for all the micro failures you're talking about. All the micro shit is awesome, because it basically reminds you that, oh, okay. And then you forget that you've done all these things, and you just kind of move forward and you realize, wow, I'm so much smarter than I was from a week ago, or a year ago, or even 10 years ago. So that's kind of my perspective on that.
So in essence, what you're saying is you consider not taking that entrepreneurship journey and someday regretting is a bigger failure than actually taking that entrepreneurship journey and really failing, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's more about living life to your best potential. And I know it sounds really fluffy, but I just want to make sure that, like, I won't regret it when I'm 7 years old thinking, like I look at I have two grandmothers and they both passed away, and one of them just like nagged about how horrible her life was and the other one was super happy. And I just look at it, I'm like, I have two choices. I can be the one who was happy or the nagger, and I don't want to be the one who wasn't happy. So that's just kind of my perspective. It's a very spiritual thing, actually, in a sense, but yeah.
Okay. We might have some investors here on the audience, and maybe as an entrepreneur we can say, it's more spiritual. I take that journey, but I take money of all of these investors, and I can fail, right? Because all of these guys are talking about embracing failure. Is that, Hemant, what do you think? Is that a fair thing to do as an entrepreneur, like taking money of somebody else and failing and then embracing that failure?
No, not at all. Not at all. So I think that's what you have to understand. So you can't really put the word out, say failing is okay. So it's not really failing is okay. You can't fail. But then there should be an ecosystem where if you fail, there should be a faster recovery period, or there's an ecosystem that supports failure. So, but then failure is not okay, because if you get somebody's money and if you fail, I mean that's really bad on you. So it's basically you have to think about an ecosystem that if you want to fail, there should be a byproduct of that, so that you don't get penalized. Now I'll give you one example. Now what I tell all these university kids is that I think Mangal also mentioned similar thing, like, you know, you can do in the first year you can start a startup. You will miserably fail for sure, right? Second year maybe you do it better than that. Third year do it even better. Fourth year you may be successful. Even if you fail, there's another byproduct that you can say. In your CV you can say that I did a startup for 4 years, but I failed. And that itself will be enough for him to get a better job than the others, because he has gone through the entire life cycle of a journey. Like, you know, if you are in the university, you might learn about maybe the engineering, you might learn about mathematics, you might learn about marketing. But if you do a startup, you learn the general subjects from the marketing to financials to technology to legal to everything. So you are much more prepared to take a better job in the industry. So it's actually you are not failed. As a person, you have gained a lot of things. So that's something that you can market. So you have to find this.
But you have already lost investor money and the trust. Have you?
Sorry, just to interrupt you on this for a second, but like, I think investors are a little bit smarter than that. Unless you're like a novice investor, like people don't give out money to random strangers. Like, I'm not sure who you've met, but if you met them, I want to meet them too, because obviously they're giving out free money. But I think it's something to just be mindful of. Like, you have to give them credit as well. For you to get money, it's also like a massive, like you have to pitch and pitch and pitch. And it is like sales, like you pitch a shitload more than you actually get. So I don't think it's like super easy either. So I don't think that is a very fair statement to say. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, I plan to fail. Sometimes it doesn't work.
Yes, and you mentioned about this particular individual who failed 10 times. Can you share that story as well?
Sorry?
This particular individual whom you know who has
Oh, yeah.
failed 10 times?
So this is a really funny story. So I used to play Kung Fu, and there was a guy in my like Kung Fu place that was an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, so what do you do? And he's like, basically, he had tried a lot of businesses, and when I met him, he had tried 10, and they all failed. And he had borrowed money, and he raised money, and he took out loans, and he owed a lot of money. And I looked at him, and I was like, you know, maybe this entrepreneurship thing isn't for you. Like, you know, maybe, you know, just maybe. But that was not his path. He ended up doing it anyway. And the 11th business that he ended up starting, he exited 2 years ago for $200 million, like basically $200 million. And I think, I'm like, oh wow, like if I just like, if think about, if he had quit at like number 10, if he had like given up, not failed, but given up at number 10, he wouldn't be where he is today. And he wouldn't have built softwares, he wouldn't have built restaurant chains, he wouldn't have literally built a small little empire. And I think it's because he had not given up. And that's why I think the distinction for me is not about failure, but more about giving up. And even, for example, in your case, you're in Bangladesh and you left, and then you go ahead do a shit business and then you're doing an incubator and now going to go off something else. And I don't think
Nirjo,
it's-
can you take your journey as an example on this?
Sure. I think, so I was going the corporate route and decided that wasn't for me. So based off of one Skype call, I ended up in Mongolia about 6 years ago, and it was a company, it was a family office run by a very rich family there. And honestly, we failed in every single way imaginable. We tried to corner the potato market. That almost became an environmental disaster. Like, rotting potatoes in the middle of Ulaanbaatar that we had to pick up in the middle of the night. But I learned a lot through that experience of how to build a business, how to think about a business, right? Then I made the second mistake, which was coming back to Bangladesh. And I'm thinking, because I grew up in the US, even though I'm Bangladeshi, I thought, well, it's a developing country, and the Gates Foundation was wanting to start a business in urban sanitation because most people don't have access to sewers. So I made the mistake of thinking, it's a developing country, everybody must need toilets. And then I show up, and everybody has toilets. That's the one thing that Bangladesh has done a really great job of, is eliminating open defecation. That's the one thing it's known for. So it's literally me in my broken Bangla going around to people, can I ask about your pooping habits? How do you do that? And people laughing at me, obviously. Failed in so many ways, so people aren't going to pay for toilets because they already have them. Maybe they'll upgrade, we'll have container-based toilets inside the house. They're like, no, we don't want to shit where we eat. Like literally, that's what slum people told me. That's fair enough. And then tried to do septic tanks, didn't work. And at one point, because I had some money from the Gates Foundation, but I couldn't bring it into the country, I was down to my last $50. I was staying in this guest house that was like $2 a day. And I just thought to myself, well, this is it. Like, I completely failed. I completely ruined my career. My parents are unhappy, etc. What am I doing? And in that moment was my sort of epiphany, because these two gentlemen who were the caretakers, they were looking at me and we started conversing, and they asked about what I was doing. And I learned that they came from the village. They couldn't finish past high school. And at some point, one of them asked me, how old are you? And I said, I'm 25. And they also said, oh, us as well. And so at that moment, it was my epiphany to say, okay, I'm in this amazing position where I have an American passport, I have this great project. Yes, it's not working out now, but these guys will never get to taste any of this, right? That's their life, unfortunately. And so I owed it to myself to get it done. 2 years later, we ended up raising $2 million in the sanitation model that we ended up working on. So, I think that also has a lot to do with luck, but I think it shows you something about having persistence, not giving up, as she said.
Okay, all right. So after this question, I am going to get back to the audience for your questions. So please prepare with the questions. Sharanyan, you built a great business, Extreme SEO. So it had been a startup at a time, right? And you must have gone through a lot of failures and, as you said, micro failures. And can you shed a bit of a light into your journey for our audience to learn from that?
Sure. The same city, Colombo, 10 years back, I was a van driver. I was a van driver in Colombo. While I'm studying in BSc in IT from SLWIT, I did a part-time driving job. So how I turned as an entrepreneur from the van driver. This is something that I really don't want to get involved in digital marketing. But having the passion with e-commerce, it made me to go and learn, make me to drive into the digital marketing vertical. So this is how I started the business, Extreme SEO. Started with single Pentium for computer in Vaunia. During the time in 2009, there's no proper resources in northern province, especially in Vaunia. That time I started this company with just single Pentium for computer, but there's no revenue for first 3 months. First 3 months, there's no revenue. There are people, they ask me, Sarnian, what you are doing in Vaunia? So you said you are doing a digital marketing, you're starting a digital marketing company. Okay, even in Colombo, there is no digital marketing company. What you're going to do? What the hell that you're going to do in Vaunia? This is the question I received often from the people who are in Colombo. Okay, I raised the question, okay, so you are in Colombo, you are doing the digital marketing. But what exactly that you guys are doing? Are you providing kind of innovative solution for your customer? Are you creating your own package? No, you guys are copying the same package, same strategies from other different companies. So what I did my own experiment. I just created my own product. So instead of copycatting some other different strategies. This is how I started my company in Vavuniya. With after 3 months only, I got just $5. That's my first income. Now my company is earning millions, but still the $5 is the big one for me. Moreover, the first customer still he's staying with us as a partner. And now we turned as a B2B company, talking about the failure, not only the finance and from the government side as well. Since I'm in border, that time it's a war situation, I'm in the border of Vavuniya. Even the authority, they raised a question, Saranyan, why you are doing it in Vavuniya instead of Colombo? So why you are getting payments like a remittance? So do you have the customer data? Are you able to provide those data? Even though there are some occasions they have seized my funds. I mean, officially they seized the fund because we have to provide the document and proof to release the fund. I don't want to blame the government because they are doing their duty. As an entrepreneur, we don't want to put the blame on others. We want to take responsibility because it's our responsibility when you say that you own your own company, you own something, that you want to do something in a different way, you have to take full responsibility for that. And apart from the finance and hiring people in remote area from Vavuniya, that's also a hectic, a big problem for me. I used to hire freshers, like people who already passed O-level and A-level. I train them. So I don't just train them, I influence them. So this is how you want to do it. Instead of putting my idea to them, I want to ask them, okay, say, just tell me a story, what you want to do exactly. Tell me a passion. So if they say they want to go ahead with the design, okay, so these are the things that you can do it from my company. Instead of commanding them, instead of just throwing the task, I really want to get their idea because they have their own style. Instead of pushing our idea, better we can ask them to, we can learn from them or something like that. And from the environment, since it's now it's grown up, earlier it's like a remote area. In environmental wise, we had problem having kind of internet connectivity that time. So in 2009, 2010, we did the digital marketing services through the CDMA connections. The CDMA connections, that postpaid that we have to put 200 rupees CDM, the card in the Mobitel and all these things. This is how I started. Anyway, now we are earning millions. We have more than 672 in-house people, and we do have virtual people around the world. But talking about the failure, failure is the stepping stone for all the entrepreneurs, every entrepreneurs. So we don't want to mention it's a failure. This is the great chances for us to get to know who we are. And we will get to know our strength if we are getting day-to-day challenges only.
Your story actually reminds me one of the great sayings I have heard. When we say it's only 10% of the startups which succeed, somebody said it's not actually 10% of the startups that succeeds, it's 90% of the people who give up, right? So it's a different way of looking at it. So with that comment, I would like to open the panel to the audience for your questions. Please mention your name and where you work for, and shoot your question at the panel. Okay, until we get the audience ready with questions. So the startups and entrepreneurship requires a lot of creativity and innovation, new thinking, right? So this new thinking or creativity, is there any connection of creativity and new thinking to embracing failures? Are they connected, or do you need to embrace failure for you to, in order to do creative?
Yeah, so I can take that. So actually my background is actually in psychology. And one of the greatest psychologists that I know in this world is called Dr. Carol Dweck. She's phenomenal. And she does a lot of research with like little kids. And she was basically realizing that in children, that they're the best, they don't hide anything. But there's two kinds of mindsets. There's one that's a fixed mindset and one that's a growth mindset. And then the fixed mindset is the mindset where, like, I'm not sure about you guys, but like there's, you know, that kid in class who's just always really smart, who got all the answers? Yeah, that wasn't me. I was the opposite. I was dyslexic and I was struggling. And I just always thought my whole entire life that I was actually just stupid because I was just like, oh, like I just never get it right. And what she noticed with people like me is that like what happens is you have this growth mindset where you think like, actually, I'm gonna screw up anyway, but eventually I'll keep on trying and I'll get it right. And I think in life, it's just about being conscious about where you are and picking the mindset that you need at the time. I think it's really important when it comes to failures, just to like realize that it's literally a choice. And in terms of, am I learning, am I getting better, or am I sitting down and just crying in my bedrooms thinking like, oh my gosh, this is the end of my life, like probably what you did in the guest house. Or like, oh yeah, it's just like a shit moment right now, but it's gonna get better. And I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna go from being a van driver to like getting one client. And then one client becomes 10, and then 10 becomes 100. And then you're like, oh my gosh, shit, I have a business. What the hell's going on right now? But it's all different failures. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, back to audience. Anything you want to ask from their journey to success?
Hi, good evening. I'm glad that you mentioned about the mindset, and Heminda mentioned about design thinking. I think design thinking is something really important that emphasizes on prototyping and failure. I believe the key thing is failure. The word failure seems to be loosely used. We understood that it is something good, and also Heminda mentioned that that's something, it's something not so good. Initially it was told, and also we heard from Heminda that something that people could put in their CV and be proud of. So to strike that balance, is there like a sweet spot that people need to ponder and stop? Okay, this is where I failed. This is enough failure that I need to stop beyond this and then pivot myself or start doing something else or think through. From your experience, some of you have gone through the journey. Is there something that the young entrepreneurs here could take from?
What is that thin line between perseverance and pivot?
Yeah, I think I'll answer that. So one of the things that there's this debate between if you want to start a startup, whether it's you should start early or you should start late. So there's this debate as well. So one of the things that I tell, especially the young guys just after university, so there's a lot of, I mean, of course, this young life is the best time to really risk your life. But then again, you have this other disadvantage where you are not experienced enough. There are a lot of things that you don't know. But you can try a couple of times, maybe even more than that. But then each time when you fail, you should learn. So if you fail due to the same reason, then that is the time that you have to think, okay, you are not ready. You have to give it a time, maybe take some time out, do something else, maybe works for somebody, learn that, and then come back. But that doesn't mean that he can't do it. He can always come back at any given time during his life. So I think that's something that you have to understand. That's the line between. So if you are failing for the same reason, then there should be something wrong. You have to take some time out, and come back strongly later.
I actually think the best thing you should do for yourself is get a job in sales for a little bit. I think everyone should get a job in sales for even a couple of months. I was lucky. I did it when I was in university for the first time. And I remember I had to call up alumni and ask them for money. And imagine like a random stranger calling you and say, hey, you know that university that you went to 20 years ago? Do you want to give me money? And then you have people saying, literally like, off, and say like, oh, I hate you. Like, I'm unemployed, and the university gave me student bills. And I'm like, whoa, like all I wanted to do was ask you for $20 for the student fund, right? But I think it's important because it helps you just like, realize that if something's not working, you have to just pivot and try again and figure out the right angle. And just like what you were saying earlier, like if it's like, you have to be stupid. Like, you know, if you keep on trying the same thing, like Einstein said it over and over again, and expecting a different result, because that's not how it works. So if you're really serious about being an entrepreneur, I recommend just go into sales, 6 months, the best boot camp of your life. Forget everything else. You do that and you get good at that, you've nailed, I think, entrepreneurship, because you let go of all that ego, all that pride, and so forth.
Hi, I'm Adisha, and this question goes to Sharanyan. With your company, like in 2009, when the others told you that it's too early or why are you doing this, even in Colombo it's not happening, what kept you going? Because like maybe it's too early to start off, or maybe what kept you going when the audiences said it's too early? Because sometimes I have experience when trying to launch a product or when trying to execute a product, the market is a little bit too early. So what kept you going? How you saw the future of this entire digital marketing thing? Yeah.
Can you repeat the question once
Yeah.
again?
So how did you see, like when the audience has said that things aren't happening in Colombo even, why are you doing it? What kept you going when even the market is too early to reach out?
It was a hopeless situation, right? 2009, nobody is talking about digital marketing, not even in Colombo, and you are in Vaunia, and your background is not that. So what actually made you persevere 6 months without having any revenue, doing things by your own? So what did what made you to go
It's
like
simple.
that?
Hope. The hope and faith that you had in yourself. Again, my name is Saranyan. I know myself 34 years. And when I started the business, the company, I mean, I don't want to say business. It's my blood. Because in Colombo, there are digital marketing companies. There are people. There are experts. But in North, it's an untapped market. My intention is not to create profit, but I really want to try something different. I really want to try something in a different way, While I'm studying in BSc in IT from SLWIT, the professor, there's a subject in e-commerce. I have a curiosity like how the money is coming through online, how the payment is coming through online, like wire, they're saying wire transfer, they're using credit card transfer, so how it's happening. I raised several questions from my professor. She said, Saranyan, you should learn for the exam purpose only. Don't go deep. So this make me to learn more. Why she is telling me to not to go deep? So I started learning about e-commerce. Then I understand if I want to run an e-commerce business, then of course there are some certain things that I have to do, like a promotion. Then I went and learned about digital marketing. This is how I started. And answering your question, it's all about the passion. Say an example. Again, the gentleman, he raised a question about the failure. You have invested your time for a period of 1 year to give a try or to learn or try something for a period of 1 year. But if you're going to give up after 1 year, just imagine, you invested almost 12 months to learn those things. If you're going to start something in a different way, something entirely different concept, which means you have to learn another new thing. So instead of wasting your time, so for failure, there are three main reasons. Distraction. Distraction is the key element for the failure. The second thing, we always compare our product, our company, and ourselves with others. That's the second one. The third one, the faith on ourselves and our passion. So if we can balance all these things, for entrepreneur, there's no terms in their dictionary like balance and everything. There's no terms, but they know how to manage, how to delegate, how to prioritize those things. So this is how I started the business. Now I am doing well. For myself, I'm doing well. I think just focus, avoid distraction, stay focused, you'll be fine.
Thank you very much.
So you had this curiosity when your professor said, don't ask questions, to dig deep into it, right? But in our education system, in this part of the world, the curiosity has no real value given because you need to get the knowledge, repeat it in the exams, get the knowledge. How should the education system change so that kids are more open-minded to embrace failures and learn out of it? Any opinions about that? Any one of the panelists?
I think so. I grew up in Japan. My father was doing his PhD, and one of the most memorable experiences I've had was we had to get a small plot of land and become farmers. We were trying to become rice farmers. And so, there would be like discussions amongst the group about how to build the right scarecrow and to keep away the pests and everything else. And I remember that was one of the best experiences of my elementary school because it was just so out there and it was so practical. And my parents, because they grew up in a Bangladeshi system, and they were just thinking, wow, like this is so real life based. Like, and one of the most satisfying experiences was at the end of the harvest, and I was able to take a little bit of rice, and we were able to eat that, like just for the fun of it. I think education systems can do a lot more, but this is true across education systems, right? Even in the U.S. There's this tendency to focus on test scores and GPAs and things like that, and it doesn't foster in whether or not you're becoming a good person, whether or not you're being enough of a problem solver. And I think that's something that we need to nurture more, and through these sorts of extracurricular activities, and instilling that as part of the overall experience of school. And the other thing I would say is, real life isn't school, right? There's no next test. There's constant tests that life gives you every single day. And if anything, we were talking about this as well. It's like baseball. I don't know, you guys play cricket here, obviously. In baseball, if you bat 1/3 or 300, that means you're actually a Hall of Famer. You're not going to bat 100% every single time.
Since there might be parents in the audience, I want to dig a little deep down to this question. At least in Sri Lanka, one thing is our education system doesn't encourage that. Other thing is, to experience that rice and farming, our kids do not have time because they need to jump between the tuition classes, right? As a parent, is there anything you would like to share with the audience on how to cultivate this innovative mindset in children?
I can add you that. I think so. One of the things that we should do now, up to age 12, a lot of people say now there's a lot of research coming, especially kindergarten. All the students work at genius level. Now, if you look at after 18, we kill our 90% of our divergence mindset, which is our creative mindset. So forget about the education system. But generally with a Sri Lankan type education system, you keep the rest of the 10% as well. So that's what happens. But right now, what we can really do it, if the school system is really competitive, highly individualistic, what you can do it at home. At your home, you have to create that very teamwork oriented, that environment. So if you can send your child to a, like a sport, right, or a club, do it as much as possible. And especially even sports, try to make it as a team sport, not a very individualistic sport. Make it a team sport. So then you learn at least failure as a team, right? How to come out of failure. And so I think the education system in Sri Lanka is now changing. It's not that bad. Now, if you look at it now, year 2 and 3, there are no exams right now. So that was not there during my time. Now, year 2 and 3, no exams. And I think year 3 also, they have exams, but they don't say what is your position is, whether you are the first in the class or second in that, they don't say. So that at least that intention is there. I think we should look at, if you really look at like the benchmark, it should be Finland education system, where up to the age of 14, you don't get homework. Up to the age of 15, there are no exams. So that's known as the best education systems by far. So I think that's where we have to go, but that's like a dreamland.
So when you are in a startup, how do you, we talked about the macro and micro failures. How do you avoid macro failures from happening? What are the pitfalls, very common pitfalls entrepreneurs take, and how to avoid them? Any insights from the panel?
Sure. One of the common mistakes I see that social entrepreneurs especially make is because they're so passionate, and they often end up doing the product or service for themselves as opposed to the target market, right? I think it's quite important to define a target market. So let's say if you're an online pharmacy, we have one that's making $50,000 a month now. They were very smart. They didn't just say our target market is the middle class of Dhaka. Yes, that's very true, but that's not enough. Our target market is the middle class professional who's working in an office, who's stuck in traffic for 2 hours a day, who has to take care of his older parents as well, in addition to his children, as well as his spouse, right? So how do you then go out and get them? Well, you have to do a lot of outreach within offices, right? So they do a lot of health campaigns within offices and sign up customers that way. So they're very, very specific about the kind of person they want to reach and how to reach. That's important. The second part That's another thing is, you can get stuck in analysis paralysis, but doing a very simple willingness to pay calculation. I have another entrepreneur who's going to make $300,000 this year with different educational products. Anytime he introduces a new product to market, he interviews 100 parents directly himself. And so he's always testing it out. What do they want? How to offer it to them, as well as what price they're willing to pay. And then doing the working backwards, right? Like, how do you actually build a product or service and whether or not that makes sense? And then he executes. I think that's quite important, is really defining your target market, as well as figuring out at what price they're willing to take a product. And whether or
Financial
not,
feasibility.
Exactly. I think a lot of them just don't do enough of that.
Yasmin, you are into your newest startup, right? Vision, strategy, storytelling. How do you ensure in this particular new business you actually deliver or you actually design a business which has a market or which has a market potential, or is this a real need? Maybe you can brief a little bit about your new startup as well, the idea.
Yeah, so basically, essentially, I'm a communicator, obviously. So one of the things that I realize is a lot of times that startups will basically make their messaging very complicated. So we wanted to make a simpler way of doing that. And when we first started, we didn't really have a product. So I don't necessarily think you have to have a plan. You just like, okay, I'm going to just fix this problem that companies need more visibility. So for us, literally, the first, I would say 6 months, I would have on average 4 to 6 coffee chats a week, right? New people, new prospects, new clients. It was that simple. And I would basically say like, oh, we do this. And they're like, oh, yeah, I need that. I'm like, okay, I guess we do this now. And then basically my team would deliver on all these things. And the first 6 months, it was just literally delivering on services to kind of eventually filter out what is the core we wanted to focus on. Because in the end of trying to spend a lot of time packaging stuff, like what you mentioned earlier, like a big pain point, just go out, listen. And when you hear the same problem, it's pretty much people want a solution. And people are super happy to pay for it. Another problem I feel people struggle as well, they don't ask for the money early enough. They're like, oh yeah, we're in beta, we're just testing, we'll get back to you. No, contract, money, payment. That's all you need to do is I need cash in the bank, basically. And I think, at least for us, we've been around now for 18 months. We're gonna be closing $1 million in revenue this year, and that came from nothing. That just came from coffee chats. We're also going to be investing in building a software subscription service. And that didn't happen because I knew what I was building. I think I probably spoken to at least 500 people in the past year and a half. And they've been telling me what they want. And I'm going to build it for them. So I think it's essentially is just listening and just going and letting go of stuff and just finding out a problem that you care about a lot, whether it's whether it's about SEO, digital marketing, or whether it's about trees. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of his story, but he's now by mistake started a company or a project, and now it's a company. So I think a lot of times it's about being curious as well. So.
All right. Thank you very much. With that comment, we are actually coming to the end of the panel. And I'd like to especially thank the panel here. They actually flew from abroad just to participate this conference, and thank you very much, some of them, and Heminder, Sharanyan, our own local gurus as well. Right? Thank you very much for participating in the panel, and thanks for being a great audience, and have a nice evening. There are a lot of other events happening around. Please participate. Thanks.